You already know enough. That is not your problem. Think about that for a moment. You have studied charts. You have read books. You have watched videos, followed traders, maybe even paid for courses or mentorship. You understand support and resistance. You know what a trend looks like. You can identify when a setup is forming. And yet, you are still losing. Or you are winning and then giving it all back. Or you are sitting on your hands when you should be entering and pulling the trigger at exactly the wrong moment. So here is the uncomfortable truth that most people in this industry will never say to your face. Your problem is not knowledge. It never was. I have worked with traders at every level, beginners, professionals, people managing millions of dollars, and people trading their last few thousand. And the pattern I kept seeing over and over again was not ignorance. It was not a lack of strategy. It was something far more difficult to face. The people who were struggling the most were often the ones who understood the most. They could explain their mistakes in perfect detail after the fact. They knew exactly what they did wrong. And then they went and did it again. That gap, the space between knowing and doing, is what this video is about, not motivation, not discipline, not another framework for managing your trades. What I am going to show you is why that gap exists in the first place, why it is not a willpower problem, why reading more books will not fix it, and what actually has to change if you are ever going to trade with real consistency. This is the conversation most educators avoid, because it is uncomfortable, and because it puts the responsibility exactly where it belongs, on you. Not on the market, not on your broker, not on your strategy, on the beliefs running silently in the background of your mind every single time you sit down to trade. Here is what is actually happening inside you when you trade. Your brain was not built for the market. That is not an insult, it is a fact. The human brain evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to keep you alive, to detect threats, to avoid pain, to seek certainty. And when it cannot find certainty, it creates the illusion of it. These are not weaknesses. In the world your ancestors lived in, these instincts kept them breathing. But in the market, these same instincts will destroy you. Let me explain what I mean. There is a mechanism in your brain called loss aversion. Research has shown consistently that the pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the same thing. Twice as powerful. So when you are sitting in a losing trade, your brain is not processing that situation the way it processes information on a chart. It is processing it the way it processes a physical threat. The same circuitry that would fire if you were in danger is firing because your account is down 2%. And what does your brain tell you to do when you are in danger? Survive. Do something. Do anything. Get out of pain. That is why you move your stop loss, not because the chart told you to, because your brain demanded relief. And here's the other side of that same coin. When you are in a winning trade, your brain shifts into a completely different mode. It becomes afraid of losing what it has already gained. So, it pushes you to take profit too early, to lock it in, to remove the uncertainty. And so you exit a trade that was heading exactly where your analysis said it would go, because the sensation of holding that open profit became unbearable. You did not make those decisions. Your nervous system made them for you. Think about this outside of trading for a moment. Imagine you are trying to change your diet. You know exactly what to eat. You have read the research. You understand the consequences of making poor choices. And then someone puts a plate of food in front of you that you know you should not eat, and you eat it anyway. Not because you forgot the information. Not because you suddenly stopped caring about your health. But because something deeper than knowledge took over in that moment. Something automatic. Something that had been reinforced over years and years of behavior. That is what is happening at your trading desk. Your decisions in the market are not being made primarily by the rational, analytical part of your mind, the part that studied the setup, identified the entry, and planned the trade. They are being made by a much older, much faster system. A system that learned its patterns long before you ever opened a trading platform. A system that does not distinguish between a losing trade and a physical threat. A system that will override your best intentions every single time, until you understand what it is and how it works. The problem is not that you lack discipline. The problem is that you are trying to use discipline to fight a battle that discipline was never designed to win. Let me describe what this actually looks like in your trading, because I want you to recognize yourself here. I want you to see your own behavior clearly, not to judge it, but to understand where it is coming from. Here is what happens with the first one. You have a setup. It meets your criteria. Everything you have studied tells you this is a valid entry. And you sit there. You watch it. You wait for one more confirmation, then another. The candle closes, the move begins, and you are not in it. So you chase it. You enter late, at a worse price, with a wider stop, and almost immediately the trade reverses and stops you out. You tell yourself you need to be more decisive next time. But the next time comes and you do the exact same thing. That hesitation is not laziness. It is your brain scanning for certainty that does not exist. The market does not care about your need for confirmation. It was never going to give you the certainty you were looking for. And so while you waited, it moved. Let me describe the second one. You are in a trade and it is going against you. Not massively, just enough to be uncomfortable. Your stop has not been hit. Your plan is intact. But the discomfort is growing. So you start rationalizing. You tell yourself the setup has changed. You tell yourself you are being smart by cutting the loss early. And you exit. Then you watch the trade reverse and go exactly where you planned. You did not exit because the market gave you new information. You exited because you could not tolerate the feeling of uncertainty. That is loss aversion speaking. That is your nervous system doing what it was built to do. Remove pain as quickly as possible. Here is what happens with the third one. You have had a losing streak. 3 losses in a row, maybe 4. And now you are sitting in front of a setup that looks exactly like your edge, but you cannot pull the trigger. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice is telling you that you are broken, that your strategy does not work, that you personally are the problem. So you skip the trade, and it works. Of course it works. And now the frustration compounds, because you did not just lose on the bad trades, you missed the good one too. That paralysis is not caution. It is fear wearing the mask of caution. And it is costing you more than any single loss ever could. Let me describe the fourth one. You are down on the week, maybe down on the month. And a setup appears that is slightly outside your criteria, not quite what your plan calls for, but close enough to justify if you want it to. And you want it to. Because you need to make back what you lost. You enter. And it fails. Because the market does not care about what you need to recover. It does not know your account balance. It does not know that you are frustrated. It is simply doing what it does, indifferent to your situation entirely. That trade was never about the setup. It was about your emotional state. And you paid for it. Here is the fifth one. And this one is subtle. You have a winning trade. A genuinely good trade that is developing exactly as planned. And instead of letting it run to your target, you begin managing it. Adjusting it. Moving your target closer. Telling yourself you are being disciplined, being smart, protecting your gains. But what you are actually doing is suffocating the trade. You are letting anxiety disguise itself as risk management. And the result is a smaller win than your edge actually produced, which means over time, your reward to risk ratio quietly collapses, and even a decent win rate cannot save you. Every single one of these behaviors has the same root. You are trading your emotions. You are calling it strategy. Now I want to introduce you to an idea that has the potential to change everything. Not because it is complicated, but because most traders never truly accept it. The market is a game of probabilities, not certainties. Probabilities? That sounds simple. You have probably heard it before. You may have even nodded along when someone said it. But here is the question I want you to sit with. Do you actually trade as if it were true? Because there is a significant difference between knowing something intellectually and having it embedded deeply enough in your belief system that it changes how you behave in real time, under pressure, when money is on the line. Most traders do not trade in probabilities. They trade in hopes and fears. They hope this trade will work. They fear the next one will not. They treat each trade as if it carries some special meaning, as if this particular trade will reveal whether they are a good trader or a bad one, whether they have what it takes, whether the strategy works. And that weight, that meaning they attach to individual trades, is exactly what causes them to intervene, to move stops, to exit early, to hesitate, to revenge trade. Let me give you a simple comparison. Think about a casino. A casino does not know whether the next hand of blackjack will be a win or a loss. Neither does it care. Because the casino understands something that most traders never internalize, that outcomes over a large sample of events are predictable, even when individual outcomes are not. The casino has an edge, a small one, and it simply allows that edge to play out, hand after hand, hour after hour, without attachment to any single result. The casino does not chase losses. It does not close early on a winning night because it is afraid the luck will turn. It does not skip a hand because the last 3 went badly. It simply executes its edge, consistently, mechanically, neutrally. Now ask yourself, when did you last approach your trading that way? Here is what changes when you genuinely accept that trading is probabilistic. You stop needing any individual trade to work, because you understand that your edge does not live in a single trade, it lives across a series of trades. A loss becomes data, not a verdict. A win becomes one instance of your edge performing, not proof that you have finally figured it out. The emotional charge around individual outcomes begins to dissolve, and when that charge dissolves, something remarkable happens. You start executing your plan. Not perfectly, but consistently. And consistency is the only thing that allows an edge to actually produce results over time. This is not about becoming emotionless. That is not possible, and it is not the goal. It is about developing what I would call emotional neutrality toward outcomes. You can feel the discomfort of a loss and still not act on it. You can feel the pull to take profit early and still hold the trade. Not because you are suppressing something, but because you have a relationship with uncertainty that no longer triggers your survival instincts. That relationship does not come from reading about probability. It does not come from telling yourself to be more disciplined. It comes from doing the deeper work of examining what you actually believe about the market, about risk, about yourself as a trader, because until your beliefs change, your behavior cannot. That is not a motivational statement. That is how the mind works. Let me paint you two pictures, and I want you to be honest with yourself about which one you recognize. The amateur trader wakes up and checks the market before his feet hit the floor. He is already scanning for information that will tell him what today will bring. He needs to know. Uncertainty is not something he has learned to sit with. It is something he is constantly trying to eliminate. He pulls up his charts and immediately begins forming opinions. Strong opinions. And those opinions, once formed, become invisible filters through which he processes everything that follows. When the market moves in his direction, he sees confirmation. When it moves against him, he sees manipulation, bad luck, or a temporary anomaly that will surely correct itself. He does not realize that he stopped reading the market the moment he formed his opinion. He is no longer seeing what is there. He is seeing what he needs to be there. When he enters a trade, his emotional state enters with him. Every tick against him feels personal. Every tick in his favor feels like vindication. He is not managing a trade, he is managing his feelings about the trade. And the market, indifferent as always, continues doing exactly what it does regardless of how he feels about it. The market does not care about his analysis. It does not care about the hours he spent preparing. It does not care that he needs this trade to work in order to recover last week's losses. It simply moves, and he reacts. And at the end of the day, he sits back and wonders why he keeps making the same mistakes when he knows so much. The professional trader is a different creature entirely, not because she was born with more discipline or a higher tolerance for risk, but because somewhere along the way, she stopped fighting the nature of the market and started working with it. She understands, at a level that goes beyond intellectual agreement, that she cannot know what any individual trade will do. So she stops trying to know. She has defined her edge. She has tested it. She trusts it not blindly, but based on evidence accumulated over time. And so when a setup appears that meets her criteria, she enters. Not with excitement. Not with hope. With the same quiet neutrality that a surgeon brings to a procedure they have performed 1,000 times. When the trade moves against her, she does not feel threatened. She has already decided, before the trade began, exactly how much she is willing to lose on this position. That decision was made when she was calm, when her thinking was clear, when emotion was not yet involved. So when the market tests that level, she honors the decision she made in clarity, not the impulse she feels in the moment. And if the stop is hit, she closes the trade, records it, and moves on. Not because she does not care, but because she understands that this loss is simply one event in a long series of events. It tells her nothing definitive about herself or her edge. She does not need the market to validate her. She does not need the trade to work in order to feel like a competent human being. She has separated her identity from her outcomes. And that separation, that quiet, earned distance between who she is and what the market does, is what allows her to keep executing when most people have long since stopped. That freedom does not come easily. It is not given to you. It is built slowly through a particular kind of self-examination that most traders are never willing to do. But it is available to you. So let me ask you something. And I want you to answer honestly, not to me, but to yourself. How many times have you told yourself that you will be more disciplined, and then found yourself making the exact same decision you promised you would not make? Not once. Not twice. Many times. And each time you understood afterward what you did wrong. Each time, You could explain it clearly. Each time, you meant it when you said it would be different. So if understanding the mistake and meaning to change it were enough, why hasn't it changed? Here is the second question. When you sit down to trade, what are you actually trying to prove? Are you trading to execute a process faithfully, or are you trading to be right? Because those are not the same goal, and they do not produce the same behavior. The need to be right will override your plan every single time the market puts pressure on you. Every single time. Because being wrong feels like more than a loss, it feels like a statement about your worth. And your mind will do almost anything to avoid that feeling. Here is the third question. What do you actually believe about risk? Not what you say you believe. What your behavior reveals that you believe. Because if you move your stop loss, you do not truly believe in protecting yourself from loss. If you hesitate on valid setups, you do not truly believe in your edge. If you revenge trade, you do not truly believe that the market is neutral and indifferent. Your behavior is always telling you the truth about your beliefs. The question is whether you are willing to listen. And the fourth question, the one that matters most. Are you willing to do the actual work? Not the work of finding a better strategy. Not the work of studying more charts. The work of examining what is happening inside you. The beliefs that were formed long before you ever traded. The patterns your mind runs automatically under stress. The meaning you attach to money, to winning, to being right. That work is slower. It is less satisfying in the short term. It does not give you a new indicator or a cleaner entry signal, but it is the only work that addresses the actual problem. The market does not care about your effort. It does not reward hard work the way most fields do. It does not grade you on intention or intelligence or how many books you have read. It simply reflects your behavior back at you with perfect accuracy and complete indifference. Every loss you have taken that you understood afterward. Every trade you hesitated on and watched work without you. Every plan you abandoned in the moment under pressure. Those were not failures of knowledge. They were signals. They were your beliefs expressing themselves through your actions. And they will keep expressing themselves in trade after trade until you decide to look at them directly. Trading is not ultimately about money. It is about who you are forced to become in order to do it well. It will expose every unexamined belief you carry. Every fear you have not faced. Every place where your need for certainty overrides your ability to act clearly. No other field will show you yourself this precisely. The gap between knowing and doing is not closed by learning more. It is closed by becoming someone different. That is the work.